Attention, please. Eastern Airlines Flight 19, now ready for departure.
Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're entering the vacation kingdom of the world.
There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we could possibly imagine. We call it Epcot. Will be our experimental prototype city of tomorrow.
Welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, taking you back to the vacation kingdom of the world, the way it was, and the way it is in your memories.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, the official podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society. This is episode 62, Thunder in Paradise, where we'll be taking you back to the early 90s with Terry Hulk Hogan and Thunder in Paradise as it was filmed at Walt Disney World. I'm your host, Todd McCartney, and sitting in with me for this episode, as always, is Mr. Hal Bowers coming in from Tampa Bay. How you going? How you doing tonight, Hal?
Aloha. I am doing well. I'm so excited that we're doing this episode. This show has been one of my guilty pleasures since it originally aired, so this is the fulfillment of a lifelong dream now.
There you go, and you sent me the tapes, and that's kind of what sparked our interest to get this thing really going. So
I know, I feel like I may have created a monster, because before, I remember I would bring this up as a topic to potentially do, and you were like, no, I'm not interested in this at all. But then when I sent you the tapes,
like, we're on.
You all of a sudden were over this, like, more excitedly than I was. And
is that true? Is that how this went? Todd denied it for years?
Well, no, I didn't deny. I remember watching the show, but once he sent me the tapes, I'm like, all right, there's just too... I didn't realize how much good stuff there was to talk about,
it's so...
Like an underwater prison?
Yeah, there might be. Oh, so speaking of from Ohio tonight, how you doing tonight, JT?
I'm good. I feel like I'm in I don't know. I'm here. I don't have anything topical to talk about, so it's, we're doing well. I'm excited.
doing well. And coming in from Philadelphia, Mr. Brian P. Miles. How you doing tonight, Brian?
Greetings and salutations, Todd and the boys. How are you?
All right, well, it's time for corrections and comments. We're just going to blend that this month with JT. You've got some viewer mail, I think, that kind of has some corrections and comments built into it, so we're just going to jump right into that and go from there. What do we got?
Cool. Good month. A lot of stuff related to recent episodes. So if you're not somebody that's listened to the last few episodes, a lot of these relate to that. So episode about Alien Encounter, some Tomorrowland stuff, that sort of thing. First one's from Shane here. He says, and I'm gonna I think debunk this right away, but you guys can tell me if I'm wrong. It says, hey, JT, I just listened to your Alien Encounter Part 1 podcast, and can you confirm with me that Tyra Banks was always the alien host, or was Naomi Campbell there briefly before Tyra? Because the first time I went on the attraction, I remember seeing Naomi Campbell, and then the next time it was Tyra Banks. Just curious if I have that correct. I mean, I guess it's possible, but I don't know. I've searched for Naomi Campbell, Disney, Naomi Campbell, Alien Encounter, all those things, and nothing really came up on IMDb or anything. Now, Tyra Banks
So Jerry Reese talks about hiring Tyra Banks, and he has actually a lot of stories about her. So that sequence was actually shot one time, and it was just used even in the second version. So no, it was always Tyra Banks. Now there is an internet rumor, long-standing, that her voice was dubbed over. But I actually don't know. I don't know if I believe that or not. We'll have to, when we finally do get a chance to talk to Jerry Reese, have to talk about it, because it sounds like her voice when I listen to her. She went on to do all kinds of talk shows and things. So there's...
Well, all right. That's Shane. Thank you for that one. Next up, Miranda wrote us with some new ephemera. We're always excited to get the ephemera samples, the scans, the photos. She sent us a little brochure. Welcome to the Walt Disney World Vacation Kingdom. It looks like it's from about 1984. Has some pretty good stuff in it. I like the the best example I can think of is there's one that says World Passports, Guided Tours, Transportation, River Country and Discovery Island. There's little icons there. I mean, they're literally the shape of iPhone or normal square icons, but they almost look like the people you'd see on like a fitness trail or something like that. The little stick figure type people. So it's a pretty cool little brochure. I hadn't seen it before. We'll definitely put that in the show notes. So thank you, Miranda. It says it's signed Miranda, but the email name says Randy. So Miranda or Randy, whoever that may be. Okay, next up, Daniel. He wrote us and said he thinks of the Contemporary every day at work. Though he showed us two pictures, basically saying the talking elevator. I think this is, you guys can confirm this. You saw this. This is actually a picture of the talking elevator, right?
It is. It is a picture of the talking elevator, of the interior of it, the control panel.
Dan's office building has the same talking elevator as the Contemporary. That's what he was telling us, and sent us pictures to show us that, which was kind of neat. Except it isn't Mickey Mouse talking. I hope.
It wasn't Mickey Mouse talking there either.
In the original, Mickey talks now.
Oh, yeah.
He does?
Yes. Yes, he does.
I didn't know it was still a talking elevator.
Mickey jumps in and says a thing or two on the elevator.
Oh, okay. In the old one, it sounded like an 8-bit video game. It was going up. Very much like if you were playing, I don't know, what was that talking video game you were talking about the other day, JT? Not Contra, but like one of the...
we were talking about Operation Wolf.
Yes.
That's the one I sent just the link to.
It might have been the same guy. You never know.
Yeah. So I don't want to get yelled at by people. Some people emailed us after the episode where we talked about the talking elevators and talking cars and said, Mickey talks on the elevator now. At which point it sparked, yes, I have heard Mickey talk on the elevator. I don't know if it's every elevator in the Contemporary or if it's just the one that takes you up to the top of the world, or if it's but there's definitely Mickey Mouse vocals in the elevator or on some of the elevators there.
Technology.
Yeah.
Thanks for the email, Daniel. We'll take those photos and throw them in our pictorial souvenir there. I think the one can go in the Contemporary one successfully and work well. So next one here. This is from Jared. Jared wrote us kind of a nice little touching story. I'm not going to read it all because it's a long email, but long story short, Jared had the pleasure of joining us at looks like RetroMagic, and he came down, met his mom and dad down there. Dad's a big history buff. Really enjoyed the legacy left wall behind. His dad was also the reason they went to Disney every year. And Dad did what we all do as dads or as, just Disney fans. He took a lot of photos. And so Jared has a lot of photos of that. And Jared he said, tragically, Dad suddenly passed 2 months later after RetroMagic. So it was kind of like one of their last big hurrahs they got to do this trip and event with. So glad we could accommodate you guys, Jared, create some more memories before his passing. So sorry to hear that, but we appreciate the email there.
Yeah, it was very touching. I replied to him. I remember when we got it, and it was a nice story.
Yeah, I definitely didn't do it justice, Jared. Apologies, but paraphrasing. Next email's from Gary. We're going back to Tomorrowland. He says he just finished listening to the Tomorrowland episode. In the episode, we mentioned the area just past Dreamflight. It looked like it was forgotten. He snapped this shot about 2 years before the whole changeover took place. And it's interesting. You can just see it looks a little bit different, almost like a test area of those pylons that kind of come up, for the people mover track and all that. So we'll share this. It's super different looking and definitely kind of unique. Says he hopes he finds a home in our archive. So I'm not sure if you guys saw this, but it's definitely it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it looks like they extended the I guess this was before they built a gift shop onto it. I never quite figured it out because I did notice, you used to walk off of if you had wings and then you'd go right outside. There was as soon as you got off the exit, not speed ramp, speed walk, you would kind of just walk outside. And then I don't know if it's because of inclement weather or what, but they actually built like a covering. So at least you could walk back out to Tomorrowland, covered up. And that's what this picture is. And then I guess later they actually kind of built around that and kind of extended the gift shop. So that way you could buy your Buzz Lightyear merchandise when you came off of the ride. So It's very cool little space right there, and it's kind of tucked off from the side, so you never really see it. So I'm glad he took pictures of it.
Yeah, he said you can tell it was a test. Is much less detailed and flatter than what went into production. So, thanks for that, Gary. We'll throw that in the Tomorrowland gallery and also the show notes because it's got such a '90s feel to it. That purpley pinkish color and all that. That's fun. Okay. Next up, here's Joe Barlow. Joe's back. His title states Disney Turnstile Inspector. Says he had a question about the Disney radio loops. We just posted that episode as well. He wasn't sure, and I remember somebody telling this. We were kind of discussing this earlier. Where was the transmitter? Did they have their own transmitter? Were they sharing the station? And then my question was, how did it know when you were pulling in or pulling out? Because I mean, was it two separate stations you tuned to, coming in, coming out?
There were two separate stations.
There it is.
Yeah, there were two different numbers on your AM radio dial, right? It's a dial.
Yeah.
People have said, "Oh, it was in the castle." I find that one hard to believe because it would. They're omnidirectional, right? They're not.
That's just too. I mean, I get
it's too cliche, and it's not tall.
Yeah,
it's not tall enough. So I would guess that it would be something either for the contemporary or just a low frequency. a low power transmitter somewhere along World Drive, so that you picked it up because the contemporary is a far distance from I-4. So you're gonna need something down around Epcot.
You would pick it up kind of at the beginning of when you would drive down World Drive, right?
Yeah, it's like they had the power perfectly tuned.
Right,
That it would
and
really
then it would kind of. What I cannot remember is if you could get it from the Magic Kingdom. I believe, listening to the exit one from the Epcot parking lot, but I cannot remember if I could hear it from the Magic Kingdom parking lot.
So one of the things I read said there was a separate one for Epcot.
The one thing I can think about, too, is where they might be broadcasting from, which would make a lot of sense. And I'd have to go back in time with our satellite imagery here. But in the 1990s, the spot was being used. It's over where the wastewater treatment plant is and where they had the mouse has been parked for a while when they moved that. So that might have been more of an industrial area there where they could have been broadcasting from. That's kind of central, right, to where it is. So who knows?
Now, since it was futuristic and way advanced, was Epcot message streaming in FM? Or did they still stick with AM?
It was always AM.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was always AM.
Yeah, because the FCC regulation is for a low-powered AM radio station of, I don't remember, it's 100 watts or what. There's some level that underneath that they were permitted to do it. Because it doesn't interfere with broader, more powerful broadcasting bands. But there's a regulation that allows a low-powered radio station for like just your neighborhood or something like that.
Last question on this: do we have a starting year when this happened? Was this Epcot time or was it?
I remember
70s?
that from the very beginning.
Yeah. The original station, was early on with the rest of the park. The original radio station was 10:30 a.m. and as you'd come onto property, it would say, "Please tune your radio to 10:30 a.m." And they added, when Epcot Center came online, they added 8:10 a.m. so that the station extended to cover most of Epcot's parking lot. So it would have not been powerful enough to cover, because that would have been the woods when the radio station originally went on the air. Right. So they did add a second one.
So it was 10:30, and what was the other one?
10:30 and 8:10.
8:10. Okay.
8:10 a.m. And then there was the bonus radio station. They had 1200 a.m. that gave you all the information you needed to detox from a day at the Magic Kingdom. I'm reading this from Parkeology. And 900
use the word detox.
Yeah, and 900 a.m. helped you re-enter the present after the breathtaking future of Epcot. So those were the exit radio stations. 1200 from Magic Kingdom, 900 from Epcot, and then you had 10:30 at the Magic Kingdom going in, and 8:10 at Epcot.
I'm sure there's some FCC record somewhere that we can
That's what I was thinking about.
Look up.
How far are we going to go down this? But
Well,
very far, dude. This is our show. Of course, we're going to go all the way.
Right in the wheel well.
we're going to start our own low-powered radio station in the parking lot so people can tune back in.
I can't
There's
tell
the
you how many times I have thought about when I was back in the 90s when I was in my prankster mode, actually buying a small transmitter and driving up a down World Drive with like a joke version of that running.
House
so
own
that way,
pirate radio station.
oh my gosh.
Oh my
There's an
goodness
event
gracious.
idea
well,
on your way out. Please tune your radios to this as you can hear the old loop.
I'm heading to Skycraft Surplus Electronics next week to see if I can buy our own little mobile broadcasting station.
We'll get a room at the top of the Contemporary.
No, we'll get one of the old Epcot omnibuses and just rig the whole thing up and drive around with a giant antenna.
beautiful.
We'll be all set.
Well, Joe, as always, thank you for your message. You always get us into the deep dives, so I appreciate that. If you'd like to write us, podcast at retrowdw.com. We check that. We do check Facebook, Instagram, anything like that.
Phone message. You can always leave us a phone message.
on the retro line.
Dial us on your telephone at 978-71-RETRO. We love getting voicemail messages.
Speaking of social media, our last little bonus one here, Brian shared this with me. Toontown Kelly wants to know, after listening to our Tomorrowland episode, this is a tweet at us. She's intrigued by the AAA Comfort Lounge. Where exactly was it, and are there photos?
My recollection is Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin, the current Tomorrowland stage that's outside of Carousel of Progress, between Buzz Lightyear and Carousel of Progress, that area where the Buzz Lightyear character meets now, standing in between those two rides, up against that back wall, that was where the VIP center is. But I'm not going to swear by that because I got to go kind of look. But my recollection is when you're riding over it on the People Mover, there's like an alcove back there. So he's kind of standing in a walkway, and that walkway originally had the, like the AAA whatever badging on it. And that's where.
Are you thinking where? Remember, just recently too, they had those cabanas kind of back in that area.
I don't know where the cabanas were because they only lasted like 10 days before they took.
Yeah.
And but
it was back behind there.
I don't. But that is my recollection. But I don't have the. I'd have to dig. I mean, some of these things I can. The minute that I ask. We worked at Disney World thing, or like 15 cast members. Oh yeah, that's where it was.
I mean, what I'm finding here quickly is it was in the early 2000s, about around that range. You'd buy your tickets through AAA, you get a voucher to go to the park. Yeah, it wasn't really a big hit, but it was there. So, but we'll get back to you on that one. Toontown Kelly, that's, obviously if you send us a tweet, we totally hit the mark on that one. So, but let us know if you have any tweets or anything like that. Just tweet at RetroWDW. And like I said, email, you can do the call, you can send us a direct message, anything like that to possibly get your question or your memory on the show.
All right, well, time's for this month's Audio Rewind. Did you guys get this one? Hal sent in another good one. Although, Hal, I thought it was a little easy, so I clipped it just a bit, just to fool you.
Well, after that outcry of no answers, I thought let's bias a little on the other side and make it a little easier for folks.
You got a fair number of people in, so let's take a listen to last month's Audio Rewind. All right, and we do have a winner. Congratulations to Jason Knox. And the answer was, do you remember, Hal, what you put in?
Nope.
All right. And the answer was Voyage of the Little Mermaid at Hollywood Studios.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So congratulations to you, Jason. We will get an email out to you and get the prize.
That show is remarkable in how long it's been there. But it's fun little show.
So I've got a good prize for this month, gentlemen. How similar to your five-legged goat key change that you did. I took our Lake Buena Vista Historical Society logo. Do I have them here? No, I do. We got this nice bag here. of the Lake Buena Vista
very
Historical
nice.
Society pins, and we also have retro WW pins. We're going to throw that in along with some other swag and stickers and different things we got if you know the answer to this month's Audio Rewind. All right, if you think you know the answer to this month's Audio Rewind, send your guesses to contest@retrowdw.com. All correct entries will be entered into a drawing to pick the winner. Have all of your entries in by November 17th, 2020. All right, gentlemen, well, it's time for this month's main topic, and how we joked at the beginning. We've been talking about this for a while. You sent me the videotapes. I spent many hours transferring and then enhancing, and I even upscaled the DVDs to interpolated HD, so it's great. But we are going back to the early 90s to talk about Terry Hogan and Thunder in Paradise. So hold on to your seats. This is Baywatch, this is Airwolf, this is Miami Vice, all rolled into one, but more importantly, almost entirely filmed at Walt Disney World.
That's right. That's really the hook here. Because while the show is not... I mean, I'm not going to say it's a bad show, but I'm not going to say it's a great show.
Well, it's a tribute to, in the genre of like B-movie action show. I mean, that's what it is.
It's a family-friendly action comedy show.
Let me throw this in there. If you watch the Sci-Fi Channel movies today, not as ridiculous as Sharknado, but along the same lines. I mean, Sci-Fi churns them out every couple of weeks. There's another, silly, instead of Hallmark Christmas movies, they do these silly action sci-fi disaster movies, and that's exactly what this is the precursor to those current genres.
The premise is very similar to, your TJ Hookers, your Magnum PIs, your A-teams, the two helicopter ones. What was it? Airwolf, and what was the other one? There was another. Blue Thunder. Yeah. So this was Knight Rider. All these independent crime fighter dudes that you never saw them get paid, but they always had some device that would, was better than everybody else and would come in and bust through. So
there were definitely things on television that during this time period that worked, and that and this is true even going back to shows from the 60s like Batman and stuff. It's like you got to have you have a very masculine action oriented take charge leader.
Yep.
You have a comedic sidekick. This is very much like our show. Actually, now that I think about it, I think I might be the comedic sidekick. I'm not sure. You have the comedic sidekick. You have a love interest, and and potentially some others.
I'm the millionaire financier.
Oh boy, he's gonna save the podcast.
And you got to have a cool vehicle.
Yep.
Like you said, either the Batmobile or Knight Rider or
there's always the millionaire behind it. It's Bruce Wayne or Jonathan Higgins or whoever Devin Miles in Knight Rider. There's always
Charlie.
There's always Charlie and Charlie's. There's always the millionaire billionaire.
So it's a formula that has worked for years and years and years, and it doesn't go anywhere.
And then in this case, beautiful locations, girls in bikinis,
the world's most famous wrestler.
Yep, the world's far right. Wrestling, I mean, on paper, this show should have been a smash hit. It has all of the elements of like middle of the road television,
Very Baywatch level too.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because the producers of the show also produced Baywatch.
Yeah, so
there you go.
So that's where a lot. Now, how you mentioned something about family friendly, and as you mentioned too, there was a lot of scantily clad men and women in this. There was a lot of gratuitous slow motion shots of people on beaches and bronze bodies. And it's funny, local WFTS channel 28, I think that's in your area actually.
It is. That's our ABC affiliate.
Beginning this week, at that time it was a Fox affiliate, would only carry Thunder on Monday nights at 10. after the primetime kids hour.
Which is
So
funny because they intended this show to run at the 8 o'clock.
Some stations did indeed
Yeah.
run at 8 o'clock, and some decided it was a little too risque. And there is a fair amount of late 80s, early 90s skin. I mean, there's no doubt.
That's part of the appeal, I think. I mean, and that is one of the interesting things about the show. It's like, I don't know if it ever quite, because it was trying to appeal to, obviously teen and older wrestling fans, as well as a younger audience. It's very confusing as like, what is that target audience?
To be sensitive to the fact that we are a single gender on our podcast, part of the appeal of Baywatch was the ladies were watching it for David Hasselhoff and the other guys with their shirts off. And this show in the same line has plenty for the ladies. Right. No matter which gender you're there to look at, on the beach, there's plenty for both of you.
That's true, because you had a ton of wrestling stars,
right,
which were in very good condition.
There are a lot of shirts off scenes and muscles popping out.
And even Chris Lemon, comedian, like he worked out for this role.
Yes.
So
let's rewind before we get into action. Let's talk about this. So it was this is what I found was interesting, and how mentioning when it was on television. It ran on, when we get to the TV portion, it ran on a lot of side stations. It was initially picked up, and by side station I mean your small WWORs out of New York.
Your independents,
your independent stations.
It was a syndicated show.
Yeah, we could talk about that.
But before that, I find it interesting. So CBS originally partnered up with a Italian company called Berlusconi Rititalia Productions, and ordered a $2 million movie along with CBS. And they were the world's largest foreign distributor, and they pre-sold 13 episodes of Thunder in Europe first, which is really, really interesting. And then CBS had 30 days after the movie to commit to the same 13 episodes. So this is going back to it's probably about 1990, maybe 91, 92.
Probably 91, yeah.
Yeah.
So on the kind of the way the business works, for those of you that have never studied any of this, and this works to the same way as film. It's like there aren't a lot of cases nowadays where a show gets completely made and then they go take it out to market. As a production company, the producers of Baywatch would have been out saying like, hey, we have this new show that we're working on, and here's the stars, and here's about how much it's going to cost to make. And they would have, before they even shot a single frame of film, they would have gone out to try to get a deal to finance it and get it made. And that's exactly where this is coming from, Todd. So, they were able to secure distribution, through Europe and potentially on CBS. Now, the CBS deal fell through. They actually never ran it on CBS.
Right.
But they were able, to pre-sell this into Europe, and that's how they knew, like, okay, we got a thing. We can actually make this into a full show, because someone was willing to pay for at least part of it.
And they already knew that Germans love David Hasselhoff with Baywatch,
right.
So they've got they knew they had an audience.
Yep, for sure. So that's what kind of made it happen. So I'll talk about kind of how the show got started a little bit, and we'll talk about who was in it and kind of the premise, just to kind of set this up, so that way we can talk about all the locations and stuff. So I happen to have, you mentioned this was big in Europe. I happen to have this book called The Official Thunder in Paradise Annual, which was printed in England. Well, actually, it was printed in, I think, Italy. Printed in Italy, but published in London for all the fans in the UK. So hello, all UK fans. It is and I guess they did this with a lot of television shows. You see a lot of these annuals. So it's a 46-page hardcover book with pictures and information about the cast and stuff. And I'll read the description, because I think they do a very good job. Thunder in Paradise is the hottest all-action adventure series on TV, starring Terry Hulk Hogan, Chris Lemon, Kara Alt, and Patrick McNee, and Ashley Gorell. An hour of unrivaled excitement follows this fine cast through the thrills and spills of dangerous missions and adventures set in the most exotic locations.
I also want to mention that Todd talked about the original production partner was Berlusconi in Italy, which that's Silvio Berlusconi. That was his media empire before he sold all that and moved in full time into politics, where he was the longest serving Italian prime minister on and off. So that's the background on that. Which this seems like exactly the kind of show that Silvio Berlusconi would want to bring to the rest of Europe.
Yes, now that you mention it. So the premise is so Chris Lemmon plays Martin Brubaker, a fellow ex-Navy SEAL of R.J. Hurricane Spencer, who is Hulk Hogan's character.
Right.
And that's where their short names come from, Brew and Spence.
Yes. So Spence and Brew created a high-tech supercharged gunboat prototype named Thunder to support as a support vehicle for Navy SEAL operations around the world. But the Navy ended up not buying it. So they basically have this boat, which...
It's Knight Rider in a boat. I mean, that's what it is. It's
Pretty
Knight
much,
Rider in a
pretty
boat.
much. Knight Rider in a boat. So
We said this formula earlier, right?
Yeah, so they are free to kind of, ply the waters of whatever they have access to, I guess, in the Caribbean mostly, and up and down the coast of the Atlantic.
Well, right, because Hulk Hogan is based his life in Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater area. That's where he lives. That's where him and a lot of the people that appear in the show live. Production was based there. That was part of the deal.
Yep. And I'll talk about that.
Yeah.
So basically, Hulk Hogan, and we'll get into a little bio on some of the actors, but he was traveling the wrestling circuit for years, and he was really looking for an opportunity to move into film so he could spend more time with the wife and his kids, because his kids were like between the ages of 2 and 6 at the time that this stuff was shot. So he was looking to do something, that could keep him closer to home, or maybe only go out, for a month or two and do a movie and then come back home, so he didn't have to be on the touring circuit all year long. He was pursued by Douglas Shorts, Michael Burke, and Gregory J. Bonan, who were the producers who made Baywatch an enormous success. So Hogan basically convinced him to try to center the production of the film in Florida. And once that happened, he signed on as executive producer. So he became a full production partner and put his own money into making this happen. They spent $2 million to shoot a 2-hour pilot episode in the Tampa Bay area. But after that movie wrapped, they moved the production of the show to the Disney MGM studios. And the brilliant thing was that crew sees the opportunity to not only use the sound stages there, but the entire 43 square miles of Walt Disney World property for shooting locations. The show had $1 million per episode budget, which was pretty significant.
Yeah.
They used a crew of 155, mostly Florida local talent. And they used every department and every aspect at Disney MGM. They rented their cameras, they did the editing in their post-production facilities, they did the computer graphics at the post group who had their post-production stuff there. So
the things the backstage studio tour told you that they could do. And I have a quote here from Laura Nillen. She was the director of television and film development at Disney MGM, and she says, "This is the first group that's come in and made use of all that we've had to offer." And when I read that, I was like, you know what? It's true, because they didn't just use, as we're going to talk about, Disney MGM Studios. Everything that Walt Disney World could offer was used.
Everything. And when
everything except Small World. We did not get a Tomorrowland Transit in Small World.
And when you would take the backstage studio tour, there were times when you could actually see, production of the show going on. They shot on the sound stages. I remember one time going through, and the Foley stage was opened up, and they would have little signs on LED lights that would show you what was being done at the time, and they were doing Foley for Thunder in Paradise there. So it really tied in well with the tours and things, because you really got to see stuff being made. I mean, they dug a water tank out that you would drive by on the Backlot Studio tour for one of the things, and they used the heck out of everything they could there, and I mean, to the point of almost ridiculousness, which I know Todd will get into.
Yep.
But they did a great job. So as Todd said, the show was picked up first by European distributor, CBS was interested, but ended up passing on the series. But the show ultimately debuted in 45 countries, and through syndication reached 88% of the U.S. television market. So it really did have a wide distribution, and I think it was perhaps more popular in Europe than it was here. They had expected the show to run somewhere between 5 and 7 years based on the success of Baywatch, but it actually only ran for one season for 22 episodes. So I guess it just didn't really have enough of a pull in the US. But what a delightful 22 episodes we got out of it.
Well, one of the, we love these souvenir videos that Disney put out periodically, a day at Epcot Center and stuff like that. They would update from time to time. And this TV show really is like a time capsule capturing of the parks and the environments.
Yeah.
And it was so much fun to watch a few of them and spot places and be like, oh, I know where that is. Like
it's a great party game of not only on stage, but backstage stuff too.
And the one scene I was talking about there in one of the first episodes where they're running between the Morocco pavilion and the Indiana Jones set. And it's just, it all meshes fine. I know, well, that's bananas. Those things aren't near each other.
But you know what this... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, it's just in the context of, movie making or filmmaking or television production, it works perfectly. And it's like, this makes perfect sense.
And you know what makes it so hard for all of us to watch it or go, oh my gosh, it's so unbelievable. We know the place inside now. This is like going on the news, watching your news at night and going, oh my gosh, they're standing in front of the 7-Eleven down the street or the Wawa. Like, I know that place. It looks so familiar because it is familiar. You do know it. So knowing it just makes it feel that much more wrong because you know what it is and what it isn't, right?
Yeah.
So I think the average viewer that may not have been to Disney World, that did not have that, may have seen the series a lot differently, which begs the question. I read somewhere in these articles that we picked up that there was just like, oh, it's great for tourism. I'm thinking, oh, okay, but there's only a quick thing at the end that says, shot outside at Walt Disney World. So it was never implied that these were attractions, except for one episode, which we'll talk about, where it was clearly implied there was attraction. But you know what I'm saying? It just I found that quote kind of interesting. So.
Yeah, it was a wonderful showcase for everything that was there.
Yep.
For sure. So I'll give you I won't talk about all the cast, but I'll just give you a couple of quick overviews of who the important people were that were in it, just so you have some context as we do this. So the main character, RJ Hurricane Spencer, was played by Hulk Hogan, who was born Terry Bollea. He was the undisputed star of WWF wrestling in the 1980s, winning the heavyweight championship title from the Iron Sheik in 1984. And he kicked off a frenzy of popularity with American kids known as Hulkamania. Now, does anybody remember the 4 demandments of Hulkamania?
Say your prayers.
Yes.
Eat your vitamins.
Yep.
I don't remember the other ones.
Not drink your milk.
No. Be sure and drink your Ovaltine.
Train
and believe
yes, believe in yourself.
Believe in yourself.
Yeah. So I know I'm going to make a poster. Actually, we should make a poster and offer this in the store because this is important. So in a few short years, he rode the wave of WWF's integration into mainstream popular culture, appearing regularly on MTV, hosting Saturday Night Live, and he served as the main protagonist of a CBS Saturday morning cartoon series, Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling.
I watched it every week.
Do you remember that? I was too old to watch it, and I watched it because it was the best thing on in its time slot. Now, although Hook appeared in the live action segments on the show as himself, in the animated segments, he was actually voiced by Brad Garrett, who would later become famous on Everyone Loves Raymond. So, how about that? Hogan transitioned to film, starting with the role of Thunder Lips in Rocky III.
Yep.
And he cemented his persona as a tough guy who loves kids in the family action comedies Suburban Commando and Mr. Nanny. It was a very natural move for him to continue to pursue roles where he could continue to build on that reputation. And as he relocated back to Tampa Bay, Filming Thunder in Paradise really did that. It really was an extension of kind of that good guy hero character that he had been right from the beginning. While he was filming Thunder in Paradise at Disney MGM, he was actually approached by Ted Turner's World Championship Wrestling, who was also using the studio's production facilities to shoot their matches. And they ended up inking a deal. And in 1994, Hulk Hogan had a parade at Disney MGM commemorating his signing of a multi-year contract with the WCW, which brought him back into the ring. So I thought that was interesting that there was a little coalition of him and wrestling and other stuff going on there. He was given a customized Hulkified 1994 Dodge Viper to ride in the parade.
What does Hulkified mean? What is this?
Yellow and red.
So it was yellow and
kinda-
red with his logo.
In his colors,
And that's
his
like when the
theme.
Viper first came out, so it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
he's big into Vipers. He's had quite a few of them.
And that car was on display at his facility, like his beach place.
He's got a shop right on Clearwater Beach, right across from the Hilton in Clearwater Beach, Hogan's Beach Shop. And,
Yep. So in 2020, it was auctioned to raise money for charity. So $75,000 went to charity for that, but and thus ends the legacy. And he went on, of course, to do other things. There's the NWO and all kinds of other. But that's kind of how he got to Florida and at Disney MGM to do that work.
I'd like to add that his handprints at MGM Studios were stamped November 9th, 1993.
All right.
Oh, there we go.
So we know when his Star a Day appearance was then.
Yes.
For
you
sure.
go. Lots of star days for him. It sounds like he had the signing day, the parade, the Viper, the all
He was
sorts
there,
of stuff going
and then I know Brian. I think I sent you a slide to scan of him on a motorcycle as part of the collection. So we'll have to make sure we get that out there. Now, the character of Martin Brubaker was played by Chris Lemmon, the son of Jack Lemmon, who
Yes.
I know our host know. I don't know if everybody else knows.
One of my
who he
favorite
is.
actors.
Yeah, great actor. The Apartment, is that his? Is that
The
that one it's
Apartment,
called?
but our modern or more modern listeners might know him more from like My Fellow Americans, which is him and James Garner as presidents of opposite parties who have both been voted out of office. And
Is he Grumpy Old Men?
he is in Grumpy Old Men with
Yep.
Walter Matthau and Grumpier Old Men and all. And those
What's the one where he dresses as a woman?
Some Like It Hot.
Some Like It Hot.
There it is.
yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
That's a very classic comedy.
Yeah, that's the one I've...
So
Okay, so his son.
Chris made his movie debut in 1977, starring with his father in Airport 77.
Oh.
He appeared in a variety of comedies through the 70s, 80s, including The Happy Hooker Goes to Hollywood, 2 Goldie Hawn films, Seems Like Old Times and Swing Shift, which was perhaps best known for reuniting Goldie Hawn with Kurt Russell, and that's where they began their romance after they met on the set of the one and only genuine originally Family Band. And what I assume is one of the favorite shows of some of our hosts, Cannonball Run 2.
Oh, there it is.
Yes, big fan. And now that you mention it, now I remember that he's in it.
Yeah. Lemon's career skyrocketed in 1987 when he was cast as yuppie patio furniture businessman Richard Phillips on the then new Fox Network show Duet. I don't know if you guys remember
Duets. I do remember
watching
Duets.
that. Yeah, it had the good fortune of being sandwiched between Married with Children, It's Gary Shandling Show, and the Tracy Ullman Show on Sunday nights. So it was
All
right
hot,
in a
hot
big
shows for their
yeah.
time.
And the funny, so I'm going to give a little Duets trivia or aside here. When the Fox network started, which was the first time a new network was starting beyond ABC, NBC, and CBS in syndication, which was around 85, 86, I think is when it started. The Simpsons was part of that. They were a bumper originally on the Tracy Ullman Show, and they got their own show. But at the mall, as they do viral promotions back in the 80s, at the mall, there was a table of posters you could take. And for some reason, I had a poster for the show Duets in my basement for like 2 years that hung on the wall. I don't want to say I never watched the show. I watched a couple episodes, but it was on for a few seasons.
Yeah. It was actually on for 3 seasons.
There you go.
And then the focus of the show was changed to focus on Lemon's character's wife, played by Alison LaPlacia. And the name of the show was changed to Open House. And a little side note about that is I remember watching, I liked Duet and I liked Open House as well. That show introduced television audiences to Ellen DeGeneres, who played a man-hungry secretary in her real estate office, which was really interesting. So, so that's how Chris kind of got
that
to.
before or after she traveled back in time to look for a dinosaur?
Well, I guess it's both before and after, since it's time travel. Kelly LaRue, played by Carol Alt. The character was the manager and the bartender of the Scuttlebutt Beach Bar at the Paradise Beach Hotel.
A T-shirt there, Hal.
Which is the what the Grand Floridian stood in for, was the Paradise Beach Hotel. Yeah. At least in our in the pilot episode, you'll see it's the Don Cesar Hotel.
Yeah, I'm going to jump through some of those.
Yeah,
changes.
but it's the Grand Floridian in ours.
All right, I'm going to jump in here because when we share clips or photos of this, you stand there and your head explodes that Disney has not built this bar. Because who doesn't want to sit in a tiki bar on the beach between the Polynesian and the Grand Floridian in the background? Like I realize the wedding pavilion's there now and the DVC building's there now, but this absolutely should have been part of the DVC building when they built it, was putting this bar out on the beach area.
That could have been a private DVC function.
Just
man.
They'd be up all night. It's an amazing location. You're looking at the. I really had some FOMO watching them drink at this beach.
So Carol Alt found huge fame in '82 when she was selected as the cover model for Sports Illustrated's famous swimsuit issue. Through the 80s, she appeared in over 500 magazine covers, and she was the face of ad campaigns for Pepsi, GM, and CoverGirl makeup. She was cast by Bob Fosse in a West Coast revival of Sweet Charity, then got an opportunity to act in Italian-produced English-language films, which I wonder if there's any connection there with the later the people that bought Thunder in Paradise, which she then parlayed into a Hollywood career. So that's how Carol Alt.
So whenever I hear the name Carol Alt, what I remember is that she married a member of the New York Rangers, who are the rivals of our hockey team, the Philadelphia Flyers. And the Flyers fans used to, Ron Greschner, the guy that she married, they would taunt him, for being Hollywood and into supermodels and, not blue collar working class like hockey players are supposed to be. That was that was a thing back in the 80s.
That's funny.
Taunting the Rangers. Yeah.
One of the things that I think, I don't know how many people know this, but it was very smart, is she was actually the first model to kind of control her poster business. So back in the 70s and 80s, one of the things that you would see all the time with like Farrah Fawcett and other Hollywood stars is they would, you would be able to go to Spencer Gifts or Kmart or whatever and buy a poster of someone in a bikini or bathing suit or whatever and put them up on your wall. Well, she actually controlled the publishing of that, and she did it all of herself. So I'm sure that was very profitable for her back then, being a supermodel. And the last person that we'll talk about is Patrick McNee, who played Edward Whittaker, the owner of the Paradise Island Hotel. No stranger to action, McNee found fame playing secret agent Jonathan Steed in the 1960s British spy thriller The Avengers, that television show. He also appeared in numerous small roles in TV and film through the 70s and 80s, including Magnum P.I., Heart to Heart, Murder, She Wrote, and The Love Boat, of course, because who didn't go on The Love Boat?
Everybody.
He had a very small but memorable part in the James Bond film A View to a Kill. If you remember that, meets up with Roger Moore's character. And he was the voice of Imperious Leader in the original version of the science fiction television series Battlestar Galactica. And he also did the voiceover at the beginning that sets up the story about the lost tribes and trying to find Earth. But my favorite of his roles, though very brief, was as Sir Dennis Ettenhog, the owner of Polymer Records in This Is Spinal Tap.
Polymer Records.
Yeah, so he's been all over the place. So there are other side characters, a daughter played by Ashley Gorell and friends, but that kind of, I think for our purposes tonight, we'll kind of give you enough of who's who as we describe this, you kind of have an idea who the people are.
Yeah, and Ashley, she was a young actor at the time, and she went on to do some other acting too. She's they said on the set she was a little powerhouse. She knew her lines and knocked him out of the park and was
One
better
take
than,
Gorell, that's what they called her.
Exactly. So that's true. It's true. So, gentlemen, we're now going to jump into the episodes, and we're going to talk about how the episodes turned into movies. So we will start back in episode 1 and 2, which were aptly named. Can you guess, JT?
Part 1 and Part 2?
You're right. Thunder in Paradise Part 1 and Part 2. We did not get to exciting names yet, which we'll talk about a little bit. So, as Parker mentioned, this was really and we've mentioned, this was the pilot. This was to see if it could work. It was filmed at the Don Cesar in St. Pete, Florida. I've stayed there. Nice, great place. I had a lot of nice time there.
Beautiful old hotel built early 1900s.
Yep. Nice, clean pool, good restaurants. So we had a nice time. And they were still excited at this time for doing a 5-year run, maybe 7. They were thinking that this was going to go places. And apparently the owner of the hotel squawked and balked at a full 22 episode filming on their property. So this is when they decided to pick up and move the remainder of the 22 episodes over to Walt Disney World. Now, I want to go through some of these titles are funny and kind of interesting, and we're going to kind of walk through so that if you have access to the episodes or you're interested in buying them from a illegal pirate site that apparently will take 22 of your hard-earned dollars and possibly return you a copy of DVDs. There are a few of them that are out there online as well, but you can kind of go through and see these, and we might put a little video together of the highlights as well, so people have access. So a lot of the episode titles were very tongue-in-cheek, metaphoric, play on words. For instance, we have Strange Brew, but that's brew as in the character. Or the Gettysburg Change of Address, or Plunder in Paradise. I mean, they were... And then you got to the really boring ones, like Deadly Lessons, Part 1. Like, okay. It just didn't... It was kind of weird. Once they started filming at Walt Disney World, there was really one main portion of of Walt Disney World that stood out in all but the first 2 episodes we just talked about, the pilot and number 16, Endangered Species, which was, gentlemen, the Grand Floridian.
The Grand Floridian.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
That's where the bar is. That's where everything
exactly.
is.
Now, what's interesting, if you like Grand Floridian stuff, like I said, almost every episode except 16, you can see exterior shots. And what's really is interesting is that in 3 and 4, Tug of War and Sea Quinton, which we're going to talk about in a minute because it's one of the best episodes ever, I think. They actually went inside and did some interior shots. We also found in 5 that they went into Victoria and Albert's as well. I was able to trace it back to what Victoria and Albert looks like today and see how it looked like back then. And they certainly changed some things around. So from a hotel perspective, you're always going to see the Grand Floridian. It was always at the Scuttlebutt. A lot of outdoor beach scenes. There's one with the giant...
what was it called? Truckosaurus or something?
Truckosaurus or something. Yeah, that was that was hilarious. Comes out of the beach, but let's go through a couple of these and that we'll talk about here.
Yeah.
So
now the amazing thing about shooting in front of the Grand Floridian was, they're just having dialogue, or maybe there's a fight going on, and while this is happening, the ferry boats are passing. On the Seven Seas Lagoon behind them, you'll see monorails on the berm going by, and none of this is acknowledged in the show. It's just all this stuff is happening because they didn't stop. They didn't stop any of the Walt Disney World stuff during the course of this. It was all just going on business as usual.
And they were very creative with the angles. For most part, you really didn't see a lot, but if you look carefully, there's the contemporary behind some trees and a monorail beam, and like you said, there might be a water sprite out in the distance and people looking. So. It was kind of interesting. So I want to start with episode 4, Sea Quinton. So you get that? Sea Quinton. See, that's everyone is like this.
Yeah. Do people know San Quentin is a prison anymore?
I don't know. I don't think they do.
I mean, I do. But...
Well, they know Johnny Cash sang there, right? Didn't he sing that? No.
Did he?
He sang at all the prisons.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
So this is one of the best ones because it takes place almost entirely at the Living Seas in the original Seabase Alpha, which is a underwater prison to the point where the hydrolators are the actual prison cells with the doors open, mind you. There must be some special beam that keeps the prisoners. But there's this great pan between multiple cells, and the guys are just in the cells, i.e. and the hydrolators just laying on the floor like poor souls sitting in there. So
That's awesome.
But we see what Hulk goes up into the lockout chamber. They bring the prisoner down through the lockout chamber. We also go to the top of the aquarium, and the dolphin keyboard is actually in a couple shots. And I think there is a spot where I believe it's in the Living Seas lounge too, when Hulk is talking to his millionaire buddy or somebody, I forget. It does look like
he doubles his office in a different location.
Exactly, it's his undersea lair.
Yeah.
So, which was great. And we also get a little taste of Living Seas in Strange Brew episode 5, where that's where Victoria and Alberts comes into play, and they actually go inside a Grand Floridian room. So,
and I'll tell the story that was told to me, and I'm sorry I can't remember who it was who told me, but today, if you're down in Living Seas, if you go towards sort of the main viewing window, there is a little alcove with a half cylindrical window that looks out into the main habitat, and there's a distortion in that window. And the reason that distortion is there is because while they were filming the episode, they had a hot light set up there, and it actually melted the acrylic window.
Oh my gosh.
To the point where it distorts the view out of it. So to this day, if you walk over to that window, you can actually see where it's been melted, and distorts the light.
And this is on the lower level?
This is on the lower level, yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. And they did use that, that area where you go into and you kind of go around. It's got that circular end to it at the Living Seas. They used that a lot in this episode. There was a lot shot there, which was really cool. So
I have to say, this episode, just and I've watched it a few times. I just kind of refreshed myself. I think it's hilarious that to get to see Quentin, you come down the lockout chamber with like a little air tube to your mouth, and it's like they lower them down through this tube, and then the wardens stand there, and he does this like tough guy, drain it, and then they lower the water, and then that's now you're in jail. Like it's just, it's just drop.
But
down
JT,
a tube filled with water.
Those criminals are so dangerous. The only safe place is to put them underwater. Yeah, I mean it makes perfect sense. If you
with
can't
no
put
barriers on their cell, but that's fine.
Right. Had Mission Space been open, who knows? Maybe they would have been in a space one. But
that's right.
It's just so good. These just two guys just come. They're like weighted, and they just start lowering down. Right. Unless they played it in reverse and they were afloat. I don't know.
But I love the audacity. Somebody from that production company went around to every park and they just wrote stuff down. They're like, sea base. All right, let's do something with that.
That's right.
And they wrote an episode around it.
Yeah.
They literally would write episodes around locations.
It is a very interesting part of the film industry too. There's a Twitter handle I follow. He's just a location scout, and I was like, that'd be such an interesting job. We need a vintage looking barn that's or anything. But basically, I'm sure they said, I need you to do this at Disney World. Be a location scout and just figure out everything that is usable here.
Yep.
And that's interesting to think about. Was this done being that it was like a movie set? Did you go to Disney like we do for events and say, okay, I want to know where I can film things? And they, in the early 90s, had a directory of things you could use, or was it just a open
I would
floor
bet
plan?
that there was probably somebody attached to that production who worked for Disney who went around and basically generated a list of like, here's everything we got.
And here's the times it's available. Here's the, just because
you've got some undersea ability. You could do this here, Moroccan look, all that stuff. So, yeah. So if you're going to watch any of them, and you're a Living Seas fan, that's where you start is Sea Quentin. So now the next one I want to talk about. Now this is another one that they put together. We'll talk about how they put these together a little later, but it's Sealed with a Kismet, Part 1 and Part 2. And I believe, Brian, you watched this one. I believe this is the Moroccan.
Oh, it's something. I mean,
it's something.
There's a Bahamian type future seer. Mm-hmm. And a magic headdress made of roses from the woods that look like they're just outside the Grand Floridian there, like where the parking lot is. And a sheik, who's not really a sheik, comes and takes the woman, Carol Alt, to, I assume, Morocco for real, or some Middle
Oh,
Eastern.
I think it was a fake named country.
It
was it?
was, but my point will be that after Hulk Hogan and Chris Lemon she has a little receiver they give her before she goes off with this Sheik to marry him, only to discover that he's basically pimping her out as booty to settle a dispute with El Gigante. El Gigante was this really tall basketball player who got drafted by Ted Turner's Atlanta organization, but injured his knee before he could ever play a game. So Ted Turner said, "Why don't you come wrestle for me?" And the natural extension of that was he then became an actor as well and appeared in several things. Passed away in 2004, but he was an enormous guy. And so he appears in the show several times. But in this particular show, he's like a competing Sheik who the Sheik that woos her owed money to. So in order to forgive his debts, he's giving her Carol Alt. But right before she goes, Chris Lemon gives her like a Radio Shack walkie-talkie and said "This is
an incredible range.
This is a communicator. If you're ever in trouble, just talk into it and tell us." So in St. Pete, Florida, or Orlando, or wherever you want to say the show is set, Carol Alt gets into trouble somewhere in the Middle East and pushes this button and says, "Help." The message just gets out before El Gigante crushes it in his hand, the receiver, and Hulk Hogan and Chris Lemon spring into action. Now, they take this speedboat from Florida, and at what appears to be, according to House specs, 500 miles an hour. Now, you can do the math on how long it would take that boat at 500 miles an hour. It's like a 8,000 mile trip.
Yeah, they had a term for it too. Hold on, I've got it here. The boat could do what they called hyperspeed.
Hyperspeed, yeah. Hyperspeed, and it was just like what's the button? Turbo Pursuit that they had on Knight
which
Rider.
was just making go from 30 frames per second to 60 frames per second in the film.
So we need some math people on our listeners.
Okay.
At 245 gallons in the gas tank, how many times would it have to refuel?
We don't. But you can figure out how many miles.
They stopped in the Azores, you know.
But no, I mean they hold ass and they get over there. They save her, all of which is set in the Moroccan pavilion. So, inside the courtyard that's in the one room.
They even go to Restaurant Marrakesh, too.
They do. They're in Marrakesh,
Yep.
inside, outside Morocco. And then when Hulk Hogan and them finally get there and there's like a gunfight, they're firing machine guns from the top of the Moroccan pavilion. And then all of a sudden he's running and I'm like, where is that? And I realized they had moved to the Indiana Jones stunt adventure set. And so the shots actually are interspersed. Some you're in the
more
Indiana Jones
village-looking,
one.
the Indiana Jones.
Well, they are the same basic environment. But at the one point, I'm watching Hulk Hogan and Chris Lemon standing on top of this spire, and Carol Alt slides down like a zip line, and then El Gigante shoots the zip line to break it so that they can't slide down. And I'm like, where is that? And that's when I realized they're in the tower at the Indiana Jones thing.
I mean, they literally used the stunts from the stunt show.
Yes.
They didn't change anything.
Thing.
Even the
Marion zipline.
Well, even the explosion at the end, right? Even the explosion at the end.
Did they keep the Nazi plane?
No,
sitting
again,
there?
why would you change anything? Your production budget's already covered by Disney.
Exactly. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? It's the average Joe and Josephine did not know the difference between Morocco. It all just looks like some outpost.
And it blends well.
It does, except for us. We have a hard time with it.
Spoiler alert, if you plan to watch these, you can stop listening now because I'm going to tell you how the episode resolves. They save her. They hop back in the boat, put it at 500 miles an hour, and drive that boat all the way from the Middle East back to Florida.
Yep.
Well, hey, I mean, wouldn't you?
I'd get the hell out of there.
They got a microwave in there. Hulk Hogan can make himself rice.
Right.
He makes himself rice in the show and in the boat.
So the amazing thing is, the boat is in World Showcase Lagoon and pulls right up. This is before the restaurants were built there.
Yes.
Right. It pulls right up to the side. So they had to put that boat on a trailer and move it somewhere where it could get onto a waterway.
And it just so happens that there's a World a friendship boat dock right there, so it works out.
Just change the rotation a little bit that day.
It's a beautiful thing.
Now, there's another episode called Blast Off. They put some space.
We're gonna get there in a second. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hold on.
That's one of my favorite hook-ins.
We have to get to the
Disney
next one, which this is one that Hal brought up because it's called Changing of the Guard, and it was a. There were two films and two episodes that featured some British characters, and this was one of them. And the best shot is that they show a low shot of the Magic Kingdom castle, Cinderella's castle, without showing any of the turrets, and it just says London, England on it, which is great. It's just like, no, not really. But in this one, it's interesting. They utilize the UK Pavilion in Epcot. And there might be some living seas. It was really hard to tell, but it probably is.
Well, then the Canadian Pavilion. The Canadian Pavilion.
Yes.
That's a different episode.
Oh, that's a different episode.
Sorry.
Sorry. Don't want to jump my.
How I spent a lot of time on this.
Okay, good.
This one actually is at the Lake Buena Vista shopping village. There's a shot with the daughter and I believe Carol Alt outside of the Empress Lily. And
Sure.
they're at, I don't know what the heck they're doing there, but
I think they're
Riverboat
shopping.
gambling trip.
Exactly. They're on the Mississippi. So the next couple ones, a Gettysburg change of address, which is probably the weirdest of them all. If you have a chance to watch this one, for some reason, Brew and Spence wind up out in the deep woods and they meet up with a Gettysburg reenactment group. I did not sit through the whole thing. I just kind of fast forward it. There's some shots at the future location of the wedding pavilion, so they just kind of move the scuttlebutt around. Episode 10, Distant Shout of Thunder, you're only going to see the Grand Floridian in there.
You want to talk about people who are willing to work for $50 a day and cut your production costs? Civil War reenactors are at the top of the list. They probably literally had a list like, what's the cheapest things we can do?
That's right.
A Civil War troop we can get for $5,000 a day. We'll get like 150 guys.
So episode 11, Nature of the Beast. This one is interesting. I am 90% sure that the greenhouses are the land greenhouses. There's a couple shots at the beginning of Hulk and Brew in there, and it definitely looks like that. Episode 12, Identity Crisis. A lot of shots in the Polynesian grounds. In the walkways, Carol Alt has some heart-to-heart conversation with another actress, and she's having relationship troubles or something. And a lot of Polynesian bench shots. So if you're a fan of green foliage, the pebbled walkway, and the metal Polynesian benches,
when there used to be benches to sit on.
Yeah. Exactly. 13 is Queen of Hearts. We go back into a Grand Floridian room, and then we get to 14, which is Plunder in Paradise. Now, this is going to excite some fans. There is a good portion of it that is filmed. It's supposedly supposed to be some rich person's mansion or maybe secret lair, and it's actually the Adventurers Club. So, yeah, one of the things that they used there, How, was the falling organ trick, Spence reaches, or Brew, whichever, I can't remember. Jack Lemmon's character reaches and pulls a book off the shelf, and the organ comes crashing.
Oh, nice.
Down. So, Eye for an Eye, number 15. Not a lot going on there. Your Grand Floridian, but a scene was used in the DVD release of the original Thunder in Paradise. So this is where it's going to get really confusing. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, Endangered Species. We're back at the Living Seas, gentlemen, and no Grand Floridian. And what do you think we're looking at at the Living Seas this time around? What do we miss the first time?
Manatees.
Correct, the manatees. We are looking at the manatees. And then we've got a nice fight in Residential Street at Disney MGM Studios backlot and some action going on the street. So
beautiful
stuff. Deadly Lessons Part 1 and 2. This is the one you were talking about, how this is where we go to Discovery Island, the Living Seas, and Canada. It's an outpost for the bad guys.
Oh, nice.
Shot from every possible angle because that is not a big area.
Oh, yes. Well, there's two in the Canadian. There's one where I think they're talking to the Queen and she's in the Rose Garden, and it's the gardens at. But yes, in this one they actually do use the rocks and the little mountain outside of the Circle Vision 360 as a compound. And it's so funny to see these guys dressed up in full Army outfits carrying guns around the Canadian pavilion. It's just hilarious.
Can you imagine those extras just having to like walk out and get a drink or something and out, like there's men with guns.
Yeah. Oh. Funny stuff. Very funny stuff.
All right. So we got a couple more here. All right. This one's great. JT, you mentioned this one earlier. 19 Blast Off.
Yes.
This definitely very Rocket. And what do you guys think you could possibly use at Disney to represent some sort of missile silo?
Wasn't this the one, the casting or the...
Yes. The Team Disney building because of its
Yes,
round
with the yellow.
tube. So they're up on the top battling and fighting each other in the culmination or earlier on, at the team building, and they're up there. So if you want some great roof shots and looking off into Orlando in the distance, it's pretty funny.
You left out the best part of Blast Off, though, is they just, without even trying, they're in the middle of the episode, Hulk Hogan just takes his daughter to
Magic Kingdom, exactly. And there's a fantastic shot of Hulk Hogan with the daughter on the shoulders. He's walking down the ramp next to the Magic Kingdom, and there's people stopping and taking pictures and looking at him and pointing and looking like, oh, Hulk Hogan just went by me. Oh my God.
Well, he did a joke on the phone. He's at the bar and he's sitting there on it's not a rotary, but it looks like a rotary. He's on the phone, and before cell phones, and he said some joke like, "What do I look like, Mickey Mouse?" And then they cut to him going something like, "I get to take my daughter to Disney World." And I'm like, wait, they just said Disney. What's like breaking the fourth wall?
Well, they're about to break it even further. So he's go at the Magic Kingdom, or I'm sorry, London, England, right?
Yeah.
Is that the guess? Mm-hmm. They go on Dumbo. They go on the carousel. They're in front of the castle. And they're on Splash Mountain, and this
is a great scene.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
It's rolling by the car. One of the spots where you could almost touch the people.
Yeah,
and the guy Brew jumps right in, like he just breaks all theme park protocol.
But how did he get there? Thunder comes pulling up the rivers of America, and you can see Tom Sawyer Island in the background, and they just have shots of just patrons of Walt Disney World, just visitors looking and pointing that they took from the camera, and he hops out and then he runs over and jumps over the fence and jumps into the boat at the bottom of Splash Mountain and says something, and then obviously they decide they've got to go off and save the world.
I just want a blanket call out. I don't care. It will be featured on the site if we can get real footage or real pictures of that boat in the river that day. Because somebody had to be there and honey, let's go do Tom Sawyer Island. I remember it. It was so cool from a couple of years ago. Then they walk up and there's a 43-foot scarab sitting there. It says Thunder on the side. Boy, they must have rehabbed or refurbed or something there.
Yep. Episode 20, Dead Reckoning. There's some a little bit of living seas in there, but the MGM bungalows. There's a whole scene shot outside the bungalows. Well, why wouldn't you? The production crew was working out right there. Look,
right there.
Get in costume, go outside. We got 5 minutes. We'll get this whole scene done.
There's a show. That's a show.
It's
right
done,
there.
right? Yeah,
Bungalows.
It was a real quick portion of it.
The bungalow show.
The bungalow show. And then the last two episodes form Major and Minor Part 1 and Part 2. Part 1 takes place in the backlot streets of New York. The future location, the wedding pavilion, and this is where we get to get some other places we haven't been before. We take a trip to Japan, so we've taken the boat across the world to the Far East.
Boat goes everywhere.
Yeah, and we also are in the Shark Tank at Typhoon Lagoon. We're diving into the Shark Tank.
Nice. Yes. Now that's gone now, right? Is that right? Is the Shark
That's
Tank
gone? Yeah, it was all
so
filled
great.
in.
So
Yeah.
we have good documentation of that, thanks to thanks to this show.
And in Part 2, there's we go back to the Japan Pavilion and Typhoon Lagoon, and there's a lot of mixed shots back and forth between the two. But we have a fight again. Now, we already had a fight at the top of the Team Disney building. We're now fighting at the top of the wave machine. And you can see into the wave machine a couple of the shots on top of Typhoon Lagoon. There's then additional fights on the bridges, and then we end up in Japan, and he's reunited with his daughter, and they're at the red Japanese gate. And they somehow were able to block out Spaceship Earth in that.
Nice.
Terry's body, I think, blocks the whole thing. So.
Now, I in that episode, when there's the soldier called Major, which stands for
the Major and the Minor.
Morphosizing Acronylateral JPS Particle Organic Replica, because that really just rolls off the tongue. there's a section where he's having a VR fight, and it's all on New York Street, at Disney MGM. So he's walking down the center of New York Street, like shooting at stuff, which is awesome. A couple you may have missed, Todd, and I ran out of time this week, but I'm going to go back through Todd has done a great job putting up a spreadsheet of like all the locations that he could find. I'm going to go through.
Yeah, I just zipped through them.
We're going to publish an article because I know there's a couple of articles that are out there that list some of the locations. I want to have the most complete record of the locations possible.
The definitive guide.
Yeah, because in the episode where the rich guy has the house that's in the Adventurers Club, he also happens to own a water park on the same island that they use Typhoon Lagoon at. So there's a ton of shots of Typhoon Lagoon there. There is an episode, and I don't remember which one, where there are some guys up on this. They roll in the boat, and there are some guys standing on this odd platform shooting them with machine guns, and that was done at the dry docks, the ferry boat dry dock.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a weird one because you never usually get to see that. But it's just fascinating how they picked and choose. Like there's one scene, I think it's I can't remember if it's Sealed with the Kismet or if it's in another one, where Hulk Hogan is on Discovery Island and he's walking through the flamingo habitat on Discovery Island. And the flamingos are, I don't know, partially a little upset, but not totally. But it's just amazing how they just used the heck out of everything there.
Yeah.
I mean, anything and everything they possibly could. They shot there. If it was vaguely interesting, it's like they made a big deal out of it. So, and
like I said, we got to give them credit. If you weren't a fan of Walt Disney World and you didn't know what it was, you probably would not have picked up on it unless you had been there a number of times. I remember watching it with my dad, and we watched it with the point of trying to figure out where everything was. So it was a lot of fun to do that. So, so one other item of note here. So Thunder in Paradise, part 1 and part 2, that's episodes 1 and 2, were bound together without commercial breaks, and then they added a scene from episode 15 in the beginning just to make it full movie length. It has nothing to do with the rest of the plot, so it's a really weird opening. And that was released as the official movie later on of Thunder in Paradise. They then released Thunder in Paradise with Roman numerals 2, which was Sealed with a Kismet part 1 and part 2. And then they released Thunder in Paradise 3, not Roman numerals 3, just the number 3, because why? Because of Deadly Lessons part 1 and part 2. And then they used Major and Minor part 1 and part 2 for the Thunder in Paradise interactive CD-ROM game, which there's a trailer on YouTube for that if you're so inclined to go.
I'm trying to think, was that a special machine, the Philips
I want to say it was Sega, but I could be wrong. I'd have to go look it up.
Okay. I think it was a Philips, unless they were
was it
the ones
Philips?
that released it. But yeah, so they turned the episode into kind of like a choose your own adventure interactive CD, so you could kind of play through and make choices. So I don't know if they shot extra footage.
Additional footage. This is on Wikipedia. Additional footage was filmed for the use of different stages in the game. This game exclusive footage was shot at the same time as the episode itself.
Oh, okay. So there was more.
Go.
Perfect.
It was a CDI, a compact disc interactive
Philips, yep.
by Philips, or it says Philips and Sony. But
Okay. Those do occasionally come up on eBay still from time to time.
There you go. So if you've got a hankering to help Brew and Spence out, you can.
Well, who wouldn't?
I mean, really.
I mean,
So we'll definitely save. As Hal said, we'll publish this spreadsheet. He's going to go through and fill it all out. Now we do have all the episodes in our possession. Obviously, we don't want to release those all out there. That's a lot of copyrighted material here. But we're going to peruse through these and figure out as much information and that we can get out for everybody.
Yeah, we'll take screenshots. That's fair use and put them with the location so you can see it and enjoy it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think Brian had a good idea to kind of edit all the little bit of clips together, and then we could kind of walk everybody through it at some point as well, so which would be fun. The last time I want to point out,
that could be a RetroMagic segment there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we could hold that back if we get Terry. So, The last item I wanted to mention too is how we should probably talk a little bit about the theme song that's going to play us out here.
Yes, what an amazing coincidence this turned out to be.
How did we not know this beforehand? But tell the listeners.
Well, we are fans of a particular group because of their involvement on television specials. And as it turns out, that one of the keyboardists, I believe it is, from the band Pablo Cruz, after, the band, well, I guess not after the band broke up, but like as a side thing, he started doing television show soundtracks and movie soundtracks and writing and composing music for films and TV. And he ended up, I think he did a bunch of stuff on Baywatch, and he ended up writing a lot of the music for Thunder in Paradise. He wrote the theme song for Thunder in Paradise, and Pablo Cruz recorded it. But how about that? It's like, it's
so cool.
Come full circle from Pablo Cruz performing on Discovery Island to them writing a song that would be played over footage of, Hulk Hogan in front of Discovery Island. So it's a small world, isn't it?
It is. So we know this is not our normal episode, that it's not something that you could ever see in Walt Disney World, but I know we definitely had to do this.
This is 2020, so the rules don't matter.
That's right. Anything goes in 2020, whatever you want to do. But yeah, it's definitely a piece of history, and I think a lot of you guys out there will be certainly interested to see these clips and things, that we'll work to get those together for you. But it's a hoot, no matter what. And again, my take on it is, as I said before, we live it, we know the place very, very well. So it's difficult to watch in light of it being a movie. It's very hard not to watch it without picking out.
Yeah, turn it into a drinking game or whatever type of other activity that you'd like to do. But I encourage you, find a couple of the very rich episodes that we talked about that have lots of stuff.
Yep,
hunt it down somewhere. Put it on. Don't expect a lot, but you will have a ball pointing at the screen going like, oh my God, I know what that is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the DVD set is still available out there. You can purchase it. And again, it comes with 6 episodes total, the first 2 being the pilot. That's all at the Don Cesar. But, you'll get at least another 4 hours of enjoyment out of Bruin
for sure.
Spence. And you'll probably be hooked to see more.
Just the episode, it's not an expensive DVD. Just the episodes shot in Morocco are worth it, because they really use as much as they could of that pavilion, and there's shots from all kinds of angles. There's a shot where like somebody steps on Hulk Hogan's face, so then they do a shot from his perspective looking up.
You'll see them going in and out of doors that you're like, I didn't think that door ever really opened. Like, I thought that was a fake door.
Somehow they made it out of there. So a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's very entertaining in a ironic way.
Yeah. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode, taking us back to the Thunder in Paradise. So, how we mentioned earlier, you can do Scuttlebutt. You got a couple ideas for Thunder?
We got to do a couple of T-shirts for this. So,
yeah, and
I'm sure all one of you will be interested in buying them. But I'm going to make them anyways.
That's right. And you did add. Did we add some things since last month? I can't remember if we did. Did we?
Probably. Let me see if I can remember what it was.
Hold on. Let me go. I'm going to it right now. Oh, yeah, you added okay, yeah. So, and last month, how you added, we have 3 Alien Encounter shirts, right?
Oh, right. For our Alien Encounter, Encounter episode.
Yeah, you had Megatech. Doubt is the rust of a feeble mind, and I've been seized.
Yes. So Megatech, for those of you who didn't pick up on the episode, in the early concept art, that was the logo for the company that would become XS Technologies. So that's where that comes from. So that is actually a reproduction of the kind of crude logo that appeared in the very early concept art for that. So that's a real inside
super
reference.
Deep cut there.
Yeah.
All right, so be on the lookout for more on those. If you want to check out all of our merchandise, you can go to retrowdw.com/support us. All right, so with that, I think, gentlemen, we're about to wrap this up. We will be back next month. I know we have a couple different topics cooking in our channels here, and things that we feel like we're going to take on in the upcoming months. So definitely be back next month. We appreciate everybody listening to us. If you can, give us a shout out on iTunes if possible. And we'll be back next month with another episode. And with that, keep listening. And Brian, take us out.
Follow the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society on Twitter and Instagram at LBV History and on the web at lbvhistory.org. Follow Todd McCartney and Retro WDW on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Retro WDW. For all things Retro Disney World, including exclusive merchandise, visit us on the web at retrowdw.com. On Twitter, follow our web designer Jason Bartel of Deepwater Studios at JasonDWS. Our announcer, Andre Gardner, at Andre Gardner, and follow our hosts, Hal Bowers, on Twitter and Instagram, at GoAwayGreen, and on the web at kingdomofmemories.com. For JT Kujar on Twitter, at LS1JT, on YouTube at Rubber City Motoring, and on the web at rubbercitymotoring.com. And you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, at Brian P. Miles. Retro Disney World is the monthly podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society, a non-profit, non-partisan, tax-exempt 501c3 organization, and is not affiliated in any way with the Walt Disney Corporation or any of its subsidiary or affiliated entities.